Hey, what's up BTC? I'm Eric Vaughn, Kenra Colors Artistic Director, and I'm so excited to be doing my first filming for my brand new salon here in LA. What do you guys think? I'm so proud of it. Thank you guys so much for being here with us today. I'm so excited to share with you guys some of my favorite tricks and tips for adding brightness and dimension to dark bases. I've got my gorgeous model Nat here. And as you can see, her hair color already looks stunning. She came in with a really beautiful base color already, but we wanted to kick it up a notch. So in her before photo, you'll be able to see how dark her hair actually was on her base and kind of how there was a lot of contrast between her base, her depth, and her highlights. It wasn't bad necessarily, it looked really beautiful, but we wanted to give it a little bit more harmony. So I went in first and I did a full base break on her. Base breaks can be so scary. I feel like we all have heard that horror story of somebody doing a base break and then her turning orange. Nothing about her hair is brassy or orange. I'll show you again in the before photo how dark her base color was. She was about the natural level 4 or 5. So what I targeted for her, I used our Kenra color, our permanent color. I used 8VM, 8AA, 8GB with 40 volume, off scalp. So I started in my sections. I started about 1.5 inches off the scalp. I wanted to kind of move away from that inner scalp heat because as we know, the scalp produces that warmth that is going to accelerate the color. So with the 40 volume off scalp, I applied all the way down. And the reason I added that 8GB into my formulation is because I knew she had all these pre-existing highlights. And if I only had that 8 double ash and that 8 violet metallic, her highlights would be so cool toned at the end. Now when it comes to her base formula, I did the 8VM with the 8 double ash with 20 volume. The way that I applied it is I applied it off the scalp first and I watched. I kind of looked to see when I had the shift that I wanted to see through the mids. I wanted to wait until I knew that this was almost a target because that scalp heat was going to accelerate my color fast and get us to a really beautiful even base that was going to be within minutes. Her base formula was probably only on for about 5 minutes. We rinsed, blew dry, and that was it. So her color was fully transformed already. But what I want to do in the back is add a ton of dimension. She had a really heavy highlight around her face. So if I bring her all the way around, you guys can see through her interior here, she's still got a ton of depth. Even though that this is the new depth that we've created for her, I want to add some brightness and pop so it's a little bit more cohesive, especially with how light and bright she is around her face. So I'm going to be adding in a combination of highlights and lowlights in a really unique placement. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm using for my lightener, I'm using our Vaughn lightener with 20 volume because I want to make sure I get a good boost of lift in her brunette hair. The thing that I love about Vaughn is it already has protection mixed in for you, so you know that you're lifting safe and gently. So I'm taking my first diagonal back. I'm going to clip my front section out of the way. Taking that first diagonal back, I'm not wanting to work in too small of sections because again, I don't want to eliminate all of this depth. I want to keep some of her depth in here, but I'm going to be working in groups of 3s and that'll make sense in just a minute. So I'm taking my first slice across, over directing to the side. If I work straight here and I paint, I'm going to end up with harshness. So I'm stepping to my side, so I'm already over directing, which is going to create blend, and I'm giving a very soft push. I'm not doing a heavy tease in this first foil, and again, it'll make more sense in my groups of 3s in just a minute, but in each 3, my teasing is going to become more heavy to create more blend as I work up the head. So I want this one to have the most pop, so I'm taking out a strong weave, and again, I'm going in with my Vaughn lightener with 20 volume. And because it was a base break, it wasn't on for the full 30 to 40 minute process time. It was only on for about 15 to 20 minutes total. So I'm not worried about that true full deposit of the permanent color, but I still want to make sure that we get bold and dramatic lift on her, which is why I'm using 20 volume. I'm painting at a slight diagonal up, towards the face, down towards the back. So when this lays in a natural fall, I've got my over direction, my painting at an angle, and my T's creating blends. So when this is all brushed out, it is going to be so seamless, especially when it's laying in natural fall. The other thing that I think is really, really important here is to make sure that your saturation is really, really, really thorough. When you're working in bigger, bolder sections, if your saturation is really thin, you're gonna end up with very, very minimal lift, or you're gonna end up with splotchiness. Nobody wants splotchy hair color. I don't like to fold my foils when I'm working, especially when I'm working in long hair like this. I really prefer to keep my foils laying flat so I don't create crease marks within my work. Crease marks eliminate product, which creates inconsistent lifting. So I like to keep my foils laying flat. And again, because I'm wanting to keep depth and dimension, I'm not taking my sections back to back. I'm taking a good amount of space between my sections. It's probably about ½ inch to an inch. And clipping that up out of the way. And again, I'm at that steep diagonal back. Taking my next slice. And I can see she's got a pretty bright highlight existing here with almost nothing through here. In this section, I'm going to take a slightly more exaggerated tease. So I'm giving one good push, coming back and just cleaning this up. What this is going to do in contrast to that first foil, this first foil is going to have minimal blend. So it's going to have maximum brightness. So when she pulls that hair forward, you're going to see that really bold ribbon pop through. With this section here, now that I'm getting more internal, I don't necessarily want super bold pops peeking through. So that a little bit more exaggerated tease is going to create even more blend, giving me even more softness. So I'm going to take my nice bold weave and I'm going to take a little sliver of that bright piece. And again, painting the exact same way. I always like to start my paint in my interior where I want to see the most brightness, and then I feather up. If you start painting too high, you leave yourself less room to blend, which creates more sharpness, more harshness. Two words we don't want when it comes to our hair color.
We have a question.
Yeah.
How do you keep her face break from going brassy?
Ooh, that's a really, really good question. And that's something that I think a lot of people are fearful of when it comes to base breaking. A couple things that I did kept me from having a brassy result. As you guys can see, we're working through the internal here, so we're not hiding anything about this base break. Nothing is brassy. So number one, formulating with the right amount of control at the right level. So I used a level 8, and I used our violet metallic, and I used our 8 double ash. Those are it's basically a ton of blue and violet being added in to counteract the orange that's going to be exposed from her natural brown. Again, I did add in for her ends formula, that little bit of the GB, to keep these highlights from going too ashy, turning blue or violet, which we don't want. So that was just in there kind of to act as a filler. So that's first, is always make sure you're formulating with the tones that you truly need to neutralize the warmth at the levels that you're lifting to. But then also, keeping it off the scalp first eliminates that over lift at the scalp. If you went right in with that, that formula root 10, you'd end up hot, very, very, very hot, especially because this base break only sat on her root for about 5 minutes total and lifted all the way up to here. And again, you'll see that before photo, how much it really lifted in just that 5 minutes. So again, starting off scalp, letting the mids process to where you want to get them to, then adding that base formula. And I took the GB out of my base formula to ensure that we didn't have a brassy result up towards the top. Great question. So now I'm going in with my third slice. Again, keeping the same distance between my foils, so it's about 1.5 inches to 1 inch. I'm not wanting to overfoil. So now I'm taking my third slice, and this is going to be my most exaggerated tease. So it's going to go from bold, softer, softest. I'm starting all the way from the bottom and pushing all the way up. This is going to leave me with all of her longest hairs on her head getting highlighted. All of her shorter hairs are going to be pushed up. So when all of this comes back down, it's going to create the most soft blend. So you're going to end up with like a shimmer of light into a bright tip, which I think is really beautiful when living on the internal.
Another question from the audience. What's your mixing ratio for your liner today?
So I like to change my mixing ratio depending on what I'm doing. If I'm doing a scalp foil, like a highlight retouch, I like my lightener a little bit on the thicker side. So I'll mix like 1:1 or 1 to 1.5. And then when I'm moving through the head and I'm using a lot of big sections, I will always mix about a 1 to 2. I started a 1 to 1.5, I'll mix, and then I add a little bit more developer until I get to that right consistency. I want to make sure that my lightener is thin enough that I can pass all the way through the hair, but not so thin that I'm diluting my product. Another great question. So again, that full tease pushed all the way up. So that's going to give me a ton of blend already. I'm still over directing. So notice I'm not standing in the back of her head. I'm standing all the way out to the side. I'm almost standing like by her ears. That's going to force me to create that over direction. So that was my last of my group of 3. Now I'm going to go in with my low light. I'm adding in a low light, especially starting to work towards the crown area because she's quite solid on her ends, and I want to add in just a little bit of depth and dimension in this area so that way she's not just all ombre. Ombre may be on trend, but for this type of color, I really wanted to give her a little bit of depth towards the bottom as well. So for this, I'm taking my section, and I'm starting more in the interior and doing a deep weave to cover more surface area. Giving this just a very soft tease just to push some of these shorties out of the way. And then my low light for her today is 7N, 8GB, and 8B. Now there's a little bit of magic secret sauce in here as well. So all of those colors mixed together is going to give me this really beautiful, like neutral to golden brown beige. But I also wanted to make sure that I added just a touch more warmth, especially through these ends that have already been cooled down from my base spray. So I added into my mixture 5 grams of 6C to give me just a little kiss of that copper. Not because I want a copper end result, but because I want to add just a little bit of warmth to these ends so they don't get drab or hollow. Because she was already so light, we did the base break, which kind of cooled and neutralized them slightly. I don't want my lowlights to end up being overly cool or drab. Our beige lives a little bit on the cooler side, so I want to make sure that I'm filling in my formula as well. So that this truly does end up being just like a rich, like golden brown beige. And the reason I'm not taking my low light all the way up is that it doesn't need it. This doesn't need a low light. This is already gorgeous, beautiful. I'm really just adding my low light into the area where she had those previous highlights. So I started through here, mixed that in really nicely, and then just feathered up into my beautiful base that I've already created. But I don't need to do anything up here to change my base. I don't need to add any pigment to that. So now through the back of the head, all I'm going to do, continuing up the back of the head, is continuing with my diagonal back slices. Taking my diagonal back slice. And now I'm just wanting to add sparkle with my highlights. So I'm just going to be doing that very high push tease, pushing out all of her little shorter hairs, and I'm just left with the longest hairs on her head. And I'm just going to pick out some of these pieces that look dark to me and just giving them a little bit of a kiss. So I'm going to do 3 highlights to 1 low light. All right, so I'm just going to continue this pattern up the rest of the head. I can't wait to come back and show you guys the after. And if any of you guys are going to be at the BTC show in Dallas, we're going to be there as well. And I'll be teaching 2 classes along with Kendra Aaliyah. We'll be doing a really great co-class together, and then I'll be doing a color technique class by myself. So I can't wait to see you guys at BTC Dallas so you guys can learn more about us and Kendra.